Hi everyone, thank you for having me. I'm going to talk about Node. My name is Kasimir Tsonev, I'm from Bulgaria. You can reach me in Twitter or on this link where I work from time to time. I work for a health startup based in London. It's called Trial Reach. We're helping people reaching clinical trials. I'm doing, well, most of the time JavaScript for them. This is my daughter. She's 3 years old kid. How many of you have kids? Yeah, cool. So you probably know that at this age the kids are asking questions just about everything and all the time. I'm working from home. So half of the day my daughter is there. Normally she wants to play with me. And before a couple of months I was in the middle of a really important release. Like I already missed the deadline. So I had to commit some changes. I had to release the project. And she came to me and she poked me like that and started asking me what I'm doing. And because I was in a really stressful situation, I said, I'm working. But she didn't stop there. She continued asking me, okay, but what exactly you're doing? I said, well, I'm making websites. And she asked, okay, what's a website? I said, it's, okay, I'm uploading files on the server right now. And she said, okay, and just go away. And she remembered that my job is to upload files on the server. She used the same technique to find out what's Node.js. She came to me again once and asked me what I'm doing. I said, I'm writing the book. I was, again, really close to the deadline. And she asked me, what are you doing? I said, I'm writing a book. And she said, okay, is it about princess or something? I said, no, it's not about princess, it's about programming. She said, programming. What the hell is programming? I said, okay, it's about Node.js. She asked, oh, Node.js, what's Node.js? And I said, it's JavaScript on the server. And she said, okay, and just go away. So she knew that Node.js is JavaScript on the server. And a few days after that, she just go to people and start asking them, do you know what's Node.js? The people, of course, they don't know what's Node.js. And she goes, it's JavaScript on the server, which is the most obvious thing in the world. And the people, they started thinking about what the hell is going on with this kid. He's talking about JavaScript on the server and uploading files on the server. It's, yeah, but this is the book that I wrote last year. I'm writing another one. This one is about, it contains 12 chapters. Every chapter is different use case with Node, different things that you can do with Node. So the book is absolutely free once you buy it. So yeah, buy the book. So very quickly about Node. How many of you actually use Node like every day? Yeah, a few people. Okay. Node is basically three things. Is V8, which is Google's JavaScript engine. It's a thread pool for executing blocking file I/O operations, and event loop. On top of that, we have node bindings, which are written in C, which are actually well, they reach the APIs from the lower levels and provide these functionalities for the Node standard libraries, which are actually written in JavaScript. When I started working with Node as a front-end developer, I'm writing a lot of JavaScript, and there was no any like a native way for making modules. And when Node came, I started actually writing modular JavaScript, which was cool. This is a simple example of a module. We could just create a file. We use this global object called module and its property exports. So whatever you pass to this object, it's exposed as a public API of the module. And then we have another global function called require, and we could just access the module. Node comes with two executables. The first one is, of course, the Node 2 itself. The other one is npm, which is the Node package manager. I believe that it is inspired by the Ruby's package manager, and right now there are like thousands of models. Really, some of them are not so good, some of them are good. But the main idea is that you could, if you want to make something, you could go there, you could search in the registry and at least find some idea of how to achieve something. npm was kind of unstable in the beginning, but now it's much better. It's at least I'm using it every day, and I could say that it's production ready. To upload something to the registry, we could just we need to create this package.json file in the projects folder. We describe the name of the module, the version, some description, and the dependencies. Node is using semantic versioning, which I think is, I mean, I don't have a lot of experience with other package managers, but semantic versioning is, I think, very good. And to create this file, we go npm publish, and your model is registered in the registry. And we could install it via npm install and the name of the model. So we have this JavaScript on the server, as my daughter know. And we have modularity, we have a cool package manager. And the first and the most obvious thing that we could do with Node is actually a file server. That's what Ryan thought about in the beginning. Ryan is the creator of Node. He was interested in developing network applications. He believed that using event loop is better than actually relying on multi-threading for web servers. This is the simplest code that we can run for a server. We require the native HTTP module, we call the create server, and then listen. And all the requests that come to this server are actually passed to this callback. And we receive the request, two objects. We receive request and response objects. With request object, we could access all the properties of the request, like the method, the URL, if there are any post data or get data or whatever. We could use the response object to actually send something to the browser. So this is basically what Node server do. It accepts these two objects, and we could use them, for example, to serve files. So it's nothing unusual. I mean, most of the technologies that run servers that listen on some port provide these functionalities. This is a short piece of code showing how we could set a proper content type, and we send some content. So we could we have APIs for reading, of course, files from the file system, and we could serve them. The next thing that the people started doing with Node is building APIs. At least in the company that I worked before, we started using Node for API. It wasn't exactly a REST API, but it was pretty easy to do such things, because writing JavaScript it's actually pretty easy, and all these APIs, they're really friendly, and with just a couple of lines you could serve content to the users. This is another example showing how we could find out which is the method of the request and return some data, especially if you need API that returns JSON. It's really easy, because JavaScript is all about JSON, and there are some, even these methods that are available in the browser, like JSON parse or stringify, are really helpful when you work with JSON data. Yeah, I'm not going into details about the code. I think that yeah, it's not that complex. At some point, the people started using Node for something else. They started realizing that you could actually write command line tools with Node, and because it's the JavaScript community is so big because today a lot of things are happening in the browser. So what most of the developers actually have to understand JavaScript and write JavaScript. And it was kind of easy to write something like a shell script, like something that you could run in the console. It's a Node script, and because we have APIs for access the file system, you could actually write really helpful command line tools. And for me as a front-end engineer, it was really important to use tools that actually improve my workflow. Like, I don't want to concatenate manually files, or I don't want to minify the JavaScript manually. And when Node came, and even now I think that most of the people use Node for tooling, not exactly for running a web server, but more like a instrument for improving their assets pipeline. There are two big modules right now. Well, there are more than two, but these two are the most popular ones. The first one that came was Grunt, and it's something that we describe what we want to achieve. Like, we want to concatenate all the files in this folder and output the results in this folder. So we just describe this. We run this grunt commands in the terminal, and Node is doing everything. It could also watch us for changes. Like, I'm probably going to change this JavaScript, so I don't want to go to the terminal and run this command again. So there are watchers, and you could watch particular folder or even a pattern. Just watch all the subfolders in this folder for JavaScript files, and if something happened there, execute this task. The other tool, Gulp, is I think much faster than Grunt, because in Node we have a good support of streams, and Gulp is using streams to process the data. Grunt needs to save the files on the file system. Like, if you want, for example, to concatenate some JavaScript files and after then minify the result of the first task, you need to save something to a disk and then read it and execute the second task. With Gulp we have something else. It's more like flowing the data from one stream to the other, which is it's much faster. And right now, most popular Grunt plugins are actually available in Gulp. So if someone plans to use something, I'll just recommend to start using Gulp. This is an example of config file for Gulp. It's more like writing normal JavaScript. It's just writing a script in JavaScript. There is a Gulp module. It has some APIs like this task method. With Grunt it's a little bit different. This code here is actually concatenating JavaScript files and saving them to this folder. Grunt takes another approach, which is like defining everything in the big JSON file. I'm not sure, but in some other languages there are of course tools for this, and they took the same approach, like big XML or JSON files. I actually like Gulp much more than Grunt. So what we can do with Node for writing JavaScript? We could of course concatenate files, which is pretty simple. We could minify them, which means that we could shrink the size of the final file. During this minification, most of the minifiers, like Minify or Uglify, they provide source maps. So when you have a minified file, I'm sure that it happened to you. You go to the browser, you want to debug something, but when you want to reach to see where exactly the error occurs, you open the DevTools and you see that it's on line 1, and you see this minified file, which is not really helpful. And with source maps, the browsers actually could understand where the error occurs, and they could show you which one was the problem. If you don't like writing plain JavaScript, because JavaScript is not perfect, We could use a preprocessor like CoffeeScript or TypeScript, for example. These preprocessors, they add another things to the language. They, like CoffeeScript is almost another syntax, but you could use classes, some shortcuts for functions. Even the new JavaScript that is coming actually adopted some things from these preprocessors. We could analyze and lint the JavaScript. There are few models that we can use to establish standards in our companies. Linting, especially at least in my company, is a really important part of our deployment, because it reports if some of the developers is not like following the standards. You could set rules and say, okay, before this code goes to master, please check if this file is following our coding standards. If it's not, then just reject the push. What about the HTML? We could use Node for well, there are. I think that every developer that started working with JavaScript at some point, he made his own template engine. It's something like all the people do in the beginning. So that's why there are like hundreds of models about that. Most of the popular ones are Mustache, Handlebars, Hogan, for example. Node developers mostly they don't write plain JavaScript. They use some template engine like Mustache, which is I think the most popular one. Pre-compilation is something really interesting. If you write single page apps, for example, sooner or later you hit this problem where you have a bunch of small templates that you have to manage. The first approach that the most frameworks provide is placing these templates in the DOM, in the HTML page in script tags. And if you set a strange type of attribute of this script tag, the browser is not supporting is not processing the script tag. So you could place whatever you want there and fetch it with the DOM API. This, however, means that you have to manage this by yourself, like merging all the templates and placing them in the page, which is one more step. Another thing that some people do is just injecting these templates into the JavaScript, like using strings and just placing them in JavaScript. The other approach is loading them via Ajax, for example, which is, I think, not a very good idea because you are forcing the user to make one request further. Pre-compilation is something that most of the popular frameworks like Angular, for example, support. They provide a tool, well, normally it's Node.js tool. You run the tool, you say, okay, this is my template, and the tool is converting this template to JavaScript, to valid JavaScript, which is the template. It's not populated with data. It's the same as HTML, but in JavaScript format. So you're doing this. You bundle this JavaScript templates into the other regular JavaScript, and to get instant access to the templates. So regarding the HTML pre-compilation, I think is the best way to handle templates. And of course, there are modules for linting HTML. With CSS, we have this really famous tool called CSS lint, which is a nice module for again adding some standards, but also finding some like unused CSS, for example, for CSS styles that are actually identical to other styles, so you don't have to use them twice or something like this. We have tools that could calculate, for example, that's really a nice optimization tip. If you want to load the page really fast, we know that CSS is blocking the rendering of the browser, so you could actually extract only these styles that are above the default area. So the upper side of the upper part of your site, you could extract this from your styles and just inline them in the HTML. When we talk about preprocessing, right now SAS is the most, I think, the best actually preprocessor. But when Bootstrap came, it was based on Less, and Less is a Node.js CSS preprocessor, And I'm not sure that less is actually still in active development, but there are still a lot of people using this module. Stylus is another module made by TJ. If you start using Node.js, you'll see that most of the modules which are the most popular ones in Node.js are written by this guy. I have no idea how is this possible. But he wrote this Stylus CSS preprocessor, which is a little bit more advanced than less. But still, I think SAS is the best option right now. Yeah. So I have really something. When I talk about programming, I always think of testing, no matter what presentation I'm making, because I believe that testing is really important. For front-end developers, testing is something that was not well developed before Node.js. I mean, we didn't have actually some really nice tools for making this possible. Right now we have frameworks like I'm using Mocha. Before that, I used Jasmine. We have Karma, which is made by Google for AngularJS. Yeah, Karma is actually not exactly a framework. It's more like a test runner. We have QUnit. I never use QUnit, so don't know details about that. But Mocha and Karma are maybe right now the top tools for testing under Node. Most of the frameworks, they came with their own assert library, most of them not. So Mocha, for example, does not have assert library. You have to use a native one, or this Chai or Expect.js or Show.js. There are so many assert libraries actually. Jasmine has its own assert library. This is an example of simple test written in well, most of the frameworks, they use this describe blocks and this it blocks, which with describe we define our test suite like a big block. We could run this before. There is a after function, which are something that we execute before and after the test, and the actual test goes to this it block. And we use there, for example, here expect.js to verify that there is a selector if there are two elements on the DOM right now. Most of the frameworks, they're actually developed for a command line usage, but after that they are ported for browser usage. So if you want to write and run your test in the browser, that's fine. Mocha, for example, is available for robots. This is a screenshot of how Mocha reports in the terminal. There are a few other reporters available. Something else which is really interesting is how we could actually test the UI part of our applications. What I'm doing now at Railreach is more like writing prototypes. So we don't really communicate. Well, we communicate with your database, but in most of the cases, we develop a prototype of something. We present it to the investors, and they say, "Okay, this is good. Go ahead." So building a prototype, especially if it's a complex one, you really want to make sure that when the presenter goes to the investors, everything will work right. So we need to test everything, and how you actually test the UI, it's kind of difficult. Before Node, we used Selenium, which is a headless browser. It's still working as a browser. You could control this browser via code, so saying, okay, visit this page, click this button, or fill this form, submit this form, and tell me if the page contains this element, for example. When Node came, there are few models that we can use for this. PhantomJS is right now the most most of the people use PhantomJS. The truth is that PhantomJS is not really based on well, it has common with Node, but it's not built with Node. It still accepts JavaScript, but it's based on WebKit, and you can't really use native modules when you write PhantomJS tests. Zombie.js is entirely written in Node. Well, there is some C libraries. Zombie.js is based on JSDOM, which is a really cool model. It actually simulates the DOM in Node. So it exposes a few APIs, like making AJAX requests, for example. You have the whole DOM tree in Node, so you could use it. And what we are doing now is actually making. We made a model around JSDOM, and what we're doing is creating a virtual browser in DOM environment. So we say to this browser, okay, visit this page. Here is the HTML markup of the page, and we want to interact with these elements. We want to fill these forms and whatever. One other approach that Node brings is using test runners, which are this Karma project and Dalek.js. They don't actually rely on only one browser, and the better thing is that they use real browser for testing. So they use web drivers, and you could write the test, which you say, okay, here is my test. I want to run it in Chrome, in Opera, in Safari, and Internet Explorer. And these modules, they connect with web drivers to these browsers. They fire an instance of these browsers. They execute the test there and report the result to the console. So you just run the test. You see how these 4 browsers are running. They're executing your JavaScript, and you see the result in the terminal, which is it saves tons of time. You don't have to manually filling form and seeing if it works or not. There's something else which is one of the most popular right now use cases of Node is about real-time communications. And because Node has really good support of WebSockets, there are plenty of models like Socketio, FIA, that are making this really simple. When WebSockets became a hot topic, I was thinking, okay, I'll try to work with WebSockets, but it's kind of buggy. It's difficult to follow all the APIs, and thankfully there are some smart guys that wrote Socketio, for example, which is right now. If you search in Google WebSockets and Node.js, you probably will receive few pages showing tutorials how to build a web chat with Socketio. What's good with Socketio is that it provides fallbacks. So if you use Internet Explorer 6, for example, and there is a Socketio code there, and you can't expect that Internet Explorer 6 supports WebSockets. But what Socketio is doing is providing a fallback. It starts using long pooling to make this communication working, and you're not actually taking care about this. You don't have to think about this. This is a really simple example how you run a web server with Node and actually emit and listen from messages from the users with Node. It's just a few lines of code. Yeah. So what we can do with Node, we could write modular applications, which was not possible before. Well, it was possible because we have tools like require.js or command.js, which are defining some ways to wrap your JavaScript into module and, well, to kind of write modular code. But with Node, we have this like a native feature, which is really cool. We could run a web server, which is not unusual. Some people think that Node cannot scale, but the truth is that it's a matter of I think of programming skills, of changing your architecture. Yes, sometimes it's difficult because you can't expect just to put some RAM on the server and start receiving more requests. Sometimes you have to run another instance of your Node script and have a load balancer that is actually distributing the request to different servers. But then you need some complex logic, because if you're writing or reading from the database from these two modules, it gets complicated. So even when I started, there was a really popular thing that we did back in the days. We really run several instances of our Node script, and these scripts they are actually reading from one database. So we started communicating between. I mean, one process was communicating with all the other processes, and there was some kind of complex system, but it's still possible to scale with Node. Yeah, developing APIs. It's really easy because, as I said, if you want to work with JSON, well, I believe that most of the popular APIs right now are using JSON. It's really easy because JavaScript has really good support of JSON. If you can't rely on Node for running a web server, because, well, it's still Node does not have a version 1 even. I mean, it's not in stable version, so it's a tool that some companies don't think it's secure or something. You could still use Node for your assets management, like we're doing now. We use Python for our backend stuff, but for all the front end stuff, we use Node. If you need testing, especially testing of UIs, of testing of JavaScript, it's, I think, the right tool. There are plenty of frameworks and instruments to use. And if you need real-time applications, Node is maybe a really good option. As far as I know, Trello, for example, the project management system, which is kind of popular, they are based on Node. Even Uber, which is this taxi provider, they are using Node as well. So at the end of my talk, the big question is, can we use Node for everything? And I think that the answer is no. Like, Node is not actually a tool for complex computations. If you need to calculate something really complex, you should not do it with Node. Node is good for all these things that I mentioned. Yeah, you may hit some problems if you want to scale, but for an application that uses like 10,000 requests, if you want to serve such amount of requests, Node is a nice tool, and sometimes it's just a matter of programming skills to solve these problems. It's not only about the technology, because you could hit the same problems with Ruby, for example, but if you don't know how to use Ruby, you'll probably not be able to solve this problem. Yeah, thank you. How much time do we have? Oh, yeah, I'm so fast. Any questions? Someone?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a little bit off topic, but it's concerning the future of Node.js.
Yeah, the future.
So recently there was a release of IO.js.
Mm-hmm.
Probably have heard of it.
Mm-hmm.
Some people claim that it's going to be more agile, more flexible. It will be more developed, better developed than Node.js. Can you comment on that? Is it really a threat for Node.js?
Mm-hmm. Well, to be honest, I don't have enough experience with this new fork of Node, so I can't say if it's better or not. What I know is that the development of the main repo of Node is not going very well. I mean, the people, like, for example, last half a year, there are not so many releases, so they're not really like developing the main project. And I do believe that maybe this new fork will bring some new features or new possibilities with Node. So if I have to count on this, I'll probably start looking into this new fork. Or if at least if the guys that are actually managing the main repo is not taking care about the project, I think it's well, I don't know. I mean, it's difficult for me to give some answer that maybe satisfies your question. Yeah.
I have a question. You said that you were using Grunt and
Mm-hmm.
for all the management.
Mm-hmm.
But didn't you try using directly npm itself? Because as I know, we can define all the jobs we need, and also
Yeah.
all the packages can be loaded simply in package
Mm-hmm.
JSON.
We do use npm for this. Like we have npm scripts for running the test, for example, or running the test only in special mode or something like this. But because sometimes when you want to combine different tasks, it's kind of difficult with npm. Especially with Gulp, you could do really whatever you want because you're basically writing a script. But with npm, sometimes it's difficult when you have um, tasks that depends on each other. So if you want something to be executed after something else or before that, and if you're sure that it will work only if these tasks are run in this sequence, then you may have problems with npm. Otherwise, I really like npm. I mean, I'm writing like if you want to run the test, for example, in the project, what you normally do is like referring the module in the node modules directory, passing some arguments or something. So it's when I joined this company, there was a big giant README file with commands that I have to copy and execute. So what I did is just simply define an npm script for this, which is saving all these arguments. I mean, I don't want to repeat them every time. So yeah, it's good for simple operations, but if you have a lot of tasks that depends on each other, it gets complicated. Yeah. Okay.
Also, another question. Did you know that there are several frameworks like content management systems and built on Node.js, and do you have any recommendations?
Yeah. My talk has actually a subtitle about what is to write a book about Node. This is one of the mistakes that I did in the book. I relied on. I mean, some of the chapters are using APIs, specific APIs from specific frameworks. And so with such technology like Node, if you want to write a book about such technology, it's kind of complex because not complex but difficult because when you write something, after a month it's just not there. I mean, they release a new version. The people when the book came, some people said, "Oh, I'm not going to buy this book because it uses version 3 of the framework, but now it's version 4." That's why I didn't add any framework in the talk. But as far as I know, Express is maybe the best way to go if you want to build web applications. I'm not sure about ready CMS systems like we have in PHP, for example, WordPress or something. There's some models for this, but I don't think that are. That's really strange, actually. Why there is no any monolithic framework about this? There are some frameworks that provide really good tools for as a base for building a CMS, but not actually something that you could just install and start using, like WordPress, for example. So if you want to go to develop your own CMS, then I would suggest Express. There is this Meteor framework for especially if you want to support real-time communication, like using WebSockets in your project. Meteor is really good for this. Yeah, but I don't know for some ready-to-use CMS. Mainly because I don't need. I mean, so far I develop only APIs with Node that run in production. I didn't use it for running a website, for example. Mainly because my managers they suck and they don't want to use new technologies. Or yeah, sometimes it's just a matter of business, I guess. I mean, you can't rely on something that came last year and it's like the newest hipster thing and yeah, they can just start using it. So but still, Node is really nice too. If you like JavaScript, you could write almost everything in Node because you have access to the file system. Yeah.
One other question.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not so interesting. What your advices regarding databases? Because we got a mean stack and it's
Uh-huh.
from all of the internet. They pushed us Mongoose, Redis, this JavaScript databases. But what's your
Uh-huh.
experience?
My experience is only with MongoDB and Redis. I don't have experience with other databases, but because these databases are NoSQL, it's I think it's, at least from a developer point of view, is easy to work with these databases. I'm afraid that I don't have enough experience to say which one is better.
Which one are working with?
Mainly with MongoDB, because it has a really good driver in the beginning when we started using nodes in my previous company, and one of the developers in this company was actually part of developing the driver. So it was it has a nice API. It's just easy to access the database, and it's actually Node has a lot of drivers for different databases. But which one is better? I guess I could have such opinion if I have a big project with a lot of users, but I didn't so far. So.
I got a problem with Oracle driver for now.
They just released their Node.js driver a couple of days ago.
Mm-hmm.
Which one? No,
Oracle, yeah.
I got two NPM packages, but all of them are stuck.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll try to find the third one.
That's actually one of the biggest problems with Node. You search for a model, you see the exact name that you need. For example, if you need a driver for Oracle, you see Node dash Oracle. So you see, oh yeah, and you install it and it doesn't work. And yeah, that's the problem of the really fast rising communities. I believe that this problem was also with Ruby in the beginning. I mean, there is some phase where the good models are going up and the worst are going down. I really like how Eric is the guy that did Gulp. I met him in a conference, and we were chatting about this Gulp too, because it was really hot topic back actually last year, and it was really something that was really cool. It was working really fast. So and the people started producing more and more plugins for this. So I said, okay, don't you afraid of having a tool and plugins for these tools that actually suck? I mean, it's like Node. You have really cool technology, but the people start producing models, and some of them they just don't work. And he said it's just a matter of managing the registry. What he was doing then, I'm not sure about now, is filtering the good and the bad. So he's the creator of Gulp. He knows what's a good plugin and what not. Maybe it's kind of a way to control. I mean, to put the control in only one guy, one contributor. But it's if he knows how Gulp works, better to be like that, because the people will search for Gulp plugin and they will be sure that it works. Right now with Node it's like a jungle. I mean, you have so many models. What I normally do is just checking if there are tests, maybe the version, if there are how many commits, how many push requests, if there are issues, how many stars the project has in GitHub. So it's maybe a matter of research, but several times I found a model and I wanted to use it, but it was crappy, it didn't work. But at least I got really nice ideas from this, which is the best part, I think, because you have a lot of ideas to steal, and you don't have to solve problems like from the scratch. Yeah. Yeah, time's up. Just on time. Yeah. Thank you.